Uh, so under the resources, as I said, there's the guidance notes for the standard application. The guidance notes are sort of the meat and potatoes side of the actual application itself. So they're not related to the platform. They're related to the questions and the ethical considerations for each of the questions that are asked. So if you're looking at maybe doing ethnography, if you click in the table of contents under ethnography, it will take you to a section that will speak a little bit more about the ethical implications involved, the things that you need to consider when you're doing your research. And sometimes there's different resources. So we have links to the specific articles in the Tri-Council policy statement that you can link to. Sometimes we have internal guidelines that are available. All of that is linked here in the guidance notes. So it's really helpful if you kind of follow along in the guidance notes while you're filling out your application, and that will help to make sure that your application is complete as it can be. That said, that's not the focus of today's presentation. GoGo does presentations about the actual ethical considerations and, you know, what the Research Ethics Board is watching for. But just so that you know, that is a resource that's available to you. And then as well, so on the Converis side of things, we've created a fairly comprehensive manual for the platform to help walk you through creating an application. So this is the manual, and it's got a clickable table of contents. So once you've kind of gone through it and you know what you're looking for, you can always scroll through to the different section and kind of say like, okay, I'm submitting the application. Those are the details that I want to go to. So you can click directly to that. But for now, we'll start at the very beginning. And there's some information if you ever have questions or feedback. It's got the contact information for research.ethics@uregina.ca, and the email and telephone number are always monitored during business hours. And we give a turnaround time of next business day. So if you send us an email or phone us, we will make sure that we get to you within 24 hours. The next section shows the workflow of the platform. So it kind of gives you a little bit more of a broad overview of where your application goes once it leaves you. So there's two application flows. There's standard, which is where a faculty member submits the application. And then there's also there's also a standard by student workflow, and that's kind of what's highlighted here in purple. So as graduate students or undergraduate students, your application, once it's submitted, it goes to your supervisor for review first. And then if they think that everything's fine and acceptable, then they're the ones that submit it to our office for compliance review. So you sort of start the application in draft and then save it as in preparation as you're working on it. And then once you've done everything that you can do and you think that it all looks good, then you would select save and close and send it to supervisor's review. And then your supervisor would look at it. They can either return it to you or they can send it on for compliance review. And that's kind of the start of the review process. So initially, it's looked at by GoGo, our compliance specialist for human research. And then depending on the level of risk, she will either push the application, well, it can go back to you if it's missing anything. So there's always the opportunity for her to send it back and say, okay, you're maybe missing a consent form, or you need more information in a particular section. Or if everything looks good and it's the lowest risk, she can push it on to the REB chair for them to review, or she can push it into the review process where it goes to two reviewers on the research ethics board. And then it continues on through the process, and the chair submits comments through the platform, and then those come back to you in the form of the notice of ethical review, which you respond to in Converis, and I'll show you how you'll be doing that. And again, that response goes to your supervisor for review, and then again, back to the REB chair until the application is approved. And then at certain stages of this process, the system will generate emails to you. So there are a bunch of automatic emails that will go out to let you know where your application is in the process. Does anybody have any questions about the workflow? Does that seem to make sense? Okay, excellent. So the next part of the manual is the very basics of logging in. And again, the link is provided here to log in. You're going to log in using your Novell credentials, which is the same as what you use for your U of R email or for UR courses. It uses the same single sign-on as a lot of the other platforms. So it kind of walks you through all of that step by step. There's screenshots. So if you follow along in the manual, you should be able to navigate the system without too much trouble. The first page where you go in is called your dashboard, and that will show everything that you kind of have in progress or what you've submitted. So you can look at all your REB applications. It'll show you if there's things to do. So if something's been returned to you for comments or questions, it'll show under your things to do, or you can look at things that have been recently edited. So it should be easy to find and locate your applications. And you will do all of your work under the researcher role, which you can see at the top right. If you click on the little down arrow, there is the option to switch role. But as students, unless you are on the research ethics board as a reviewer, or if you've been assigned another role, I don't think HR would have anything for you for the faculty review process. But you should just have the researcher role that you need to worry about for now for the purposes of the research ethics application. And then there's a few different ways that you can navigate through the system. At the bottom of every page, there's always the option to either cancel, save, or save and close. The platform will not automatically save your work for you, so you have to make sure that you're clicking the save button fairly regularly so that you don't lose anything, because you don't want to lose any of the work that you're putting into the system, and it will time out on you after a period of inactivity. So just make sure you're clicking save as you go along and fill in all the questions. And then when you're done, or you want to submit the application, you're going to click save and close, and then different options will pop up depending on where you're at, and that will allow you to either just close the application and leave it in the status it's in so that you can come back to it, or if you want to push it forward to either supervisor's review or compliance review, you would do that through clicking on the save and close button. And then to move around in the application, there's a whole bunch of different ways. You can click on any of the tabs along the top. There's some ellipses that'll take you to a certain part in that particular page. There's also an arrow button at the bottom that you can use to follow along. So you can kind of get around in it a whole bunch of different ways, sort of whatever ends up being a little more intuitive to you in the moment. And then the manual also has an outline of what the framework of the application is. So if you're wondering, okay, I want to go back and update the section on recruitment, you can see here that recruitment is under Form Part 2 tab. Or you can kind of see, what the breakdown is of all the different sections and what tab they're located on. Or you can also just click on the tab and it'll show you. And then we also have a list of the notifications. So as I mentioned, there's a whole bunch of emails that are configured. So as a researcher, this shows all the emails that you can expect to get from the system. So you'll get one if you are supervising, your supervisor will get an email saying that there's an application ready for review. You'll get an email when the compliance officer, if they send it back to you requesting more information. You'll also get one when the application has been sent to the reviewers or when it's been sent to the chair, and also when the chair's comments are ready for you to review. So make sure that you're checking your U of R email account, and that will send you little reminders of where the application is at. You can also always log into Converis and look at the status, and that will tell you that information as well. And then, and I'll go through this pretty quickly in the manual because we're going to do it on the platform, but I just want you to see that the information is indeed in a manual and you can find it if you ever have questions. So it starts right from creating an application and shows you exactly where to click. So you're going to click on add new content in the top right, and then click on REB and REB application. It outlines the different application types and explains, what each one of them is and when you should be using them. So as students, in most instances, you're going to use application standard by student. I think all the studies from what you've explained in the comments, it sounds like most of you will be doing just a regular standard application. And then anything that's highlighted in purple shows the workflow for students where it goes to your supervisor for review, just so that that can be distinguished. And then it just kind of goes over the different kinds of fields that you can expect to encounter in the application, whether it's a text field or whether you're uploading documents, or we've used quite a few radio buttons where if you select a certain one, additional questions will pop up to try and make the initial glance of the form a little bit shorter, and then as more information is required, it will expand. So it is important that you're clicking the right boxes, because if you get the wrong one, you might not get the extra questions that we have for you. And then we also have tick boxes, and some of these work the same, whereas if you tick it, then additional questions will pop up for you to answer that are specific to whatever it was that you've selected. And then we also have places where you're linking to other sections within the Converis platform. So that happens when you're adding people, for example. So if you're adding your supervisor, it clicks to their record. So you'll kind of search for their name and then select them, and then that links them to the application. We have a similar thing for funding. So if you have a grant or a contract in the system, you can search and link that as well. And then the document upload is pretty standard. You just click on the little folder icon and then navigate to wherever the document is on your system so that you can upload it. There's no limit to the number of documents that you can upload. You can select multiples at once, or you can do them one at a time. And there's a lot of different document types supported, but there could be something that's not. And if there was ever an issue that you needed to upload something that wasn't of the correct format, you could just reach out to us and we can figure out an alternate solution for you. And if something's been uploaded that you want to get rid of, you can always delete it. as well, so you don't have to worry about anything being too permanent. So then it just goes into each of the sections and walks you through step by step how to enter your application. So rather than doing this in the manual, but just note that it shows you exactly what to click on, what you're entering, and step by step, and it does that through the entire application. And because it's step by step and has screenshots every step of the way, the document is pretty lengthy. I think it's about 50 pages, but there is lots of pictures, so it's not too dense. But because of that, we also made a quick sheet. So once you've kind of gone through the process, maybe you've entered an application and now you're working on a second one, or you're just going back into it another time to make some changes, but you have a pretty good grasp on things, you can just go to this quick sheet. And it's just a quick little 2-pager that pulls out kind of the most key steps. So there's the information on logging in, and then just how to navigate and add a new application, but it doesn't go question by question how to do that. So hopefully between the two of those, you're able to navigate around without too much trouble. But we're always here to answer questions as well if any come up. And as the questions do come up, oh, I missed that. We do have an FAQ section at the end of the big full manual. So any questions that come in that seem to be kind of common things that other people might encounter, we've added them to the FAQ section at the back. So if you do have a question about something, you can always check in the FAQ section and see if it's been captured there, and then it'll answer your question or refer you to that section of the manual. Okay, so from the or from the manual, from anywhere that you have that link to Converis, you would click on the link and it would take you to your single sign-on and you would be able to log in. I'm doing this in test right now, so I'm not in the production site because we're going to actually make some changes in here. So it will look a little bit different because we are in the test environment. But for the most part, it's the same. It's just some of the menus, and there's going to be a whole bunch of different applications in here. So you're going to click at the top right on Add New Content. And you want to click on REB for the Research Ethics Board. And then REB Application. And then we're going to do today Standard. And then we want Standard by Student. And then here is the application. So you're going to start filling it in, and I'm just going to do nonsense because I'm not going to enter a whole bunch of text in here. But so here we have our title. Anything that has the little asterisk beside it means that it's a required field. So there will be a little test at the end when you try to submit. If a required field isn't filled in, it won't let you proceed. It will throw some error messages, and we'll do that so that you can kind of see what that looks like. And then the next field is asking for the principal investigator. So in most cases, that's going to be you. So I'm going to put it as myself. So you would search for your name, or if you were entering an application on behalf of your supervisor and they were the PI, you would enter their name instead. So then once you find the name that you need, you'll just click on the little plus sign. And then you can see here that I've been added as the principal investigator. If you wanted to add another person, you could. You can also add a primary contact person for correspondence, only if it's not the same person as the PI. If you enter the same person in both of those fields, you're going to get an error message when you go to the declaration page. And it's not going to let you proceed and you're going to be stuck. And that's one of the things that's noted in our FAQ, because people do it all the time and then they call our office because it's not letting them fill out the declaration, because the system's confused because there's two people as both primary contact. So you're only listing a primary contact if it's not the same person that's listed as primary investigator. So if, for example, you're working on a research study, but it's not yours, it's not for your thesis, it's not for like your own project that you're managing, you're just doing the application for your supervisor, then you could list yourself as the primary contact and list the supervisor or your supervisor as the principal investigator. And then you can still edit the application, but the supervisor or the principal investigator will have to be the person that actually submits it. Does that make sense? Haven't lost her. Okay. Now, you'll notice if you keep scrolling down, all the questions are blanked out and it won't let you type or answer any other questions once you get past that. So we've made it a requirement that you add a principal investigator and click save before the rest of the questions will open up, and you'll see now you can click on stuff and enter text. We did that so that you don't enter a whole bunch of information and not link yourself. And then if it times out or you close it, but your name's not listed anywhere, it's gone.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. Hi.
I have quick questions. If, for example, I am the principal, and should I write my name, and after that I have to write my because my project is under the supervision of my supervisor. So should I write his name under the principal also or not?
No. So
Scroll
if it's your project, if it's your thesis or something that like for your honors or anything like that, then you list yourself as the principal investigator. And then now a little bit further down, there's the place to add your supervisor.
Oh, gotcha.
So for student
Thank you so
projects,
much.
yeah.
Thank you.
So here under supervisor, you're going to list, so if it is your honors thesis or your master's or PhD thesis, then yeah, you're going to have your supervisor listed here, and I'm going to put it as myself. But you wouldn't do that. You would have it as whoever it is. And again, if you have more than one supervisor, you can list them all. You're not listing your whole committee. It's just whoever the primary supervisor is. If you list more than one, only one of them submits the application. So you kind of have to talk about whose responsibility it is. They'll both be able to see it and make changes, but once one of them submits it, it's submitted. So it's not like both of them have to provide any kind of approvals or anything. It's just one of the supervisors has to okay and move it forward. So then the next question asks about certificate of approval. I'm not going to get too much into the content of each of the questions. As I said, that's something that Gogo covers more comprehensively in her presentation, or you can also refer to the guidance notes. For example, certificate of approval. So if you need approval from, say, a health region or a school board or some other organization, that's what you're indicating here. So you might say yes, and then you have the option to upload a copy of the file. So you would just click on the little upload button, and then it'll take you to your computer, and you can pick a file from anywhere. So we have a bunch of templates here. So I'm just going to pick a very, very random template and attach it. And then you can see here that you can delete it once it's attached. You can update the description. So approval from school board. So give it a meaningful name so that we know what it is, because sometimes what it's saved as is not very meaningful to us. And then you can always upload more as well. So if you have multiple that you want to add, you can do that. And then if your project has received funding, you can say yes or no. So let's say, yes, you got a whole bunch of money for this project. And then if it's funding that's managed through the research, the Office for Research Services, then it very well should be in Converis, and then you can link to it. You are able to search for anything that you're listed on. So as students, you probably don't have anything in here, but you might. So projects are things that have been submitted, but not yet awarded. So if you submitted a grant application, but the results haven't been returned yet, so you don't know whether it's been funded or not, it would be listed under proposals. And if it is something that has funding confirmed, it will be listed under projects. So you could click on the little plus button and then search for your name. And here we go, number 427, I have a project here. So it'll list the ID number of it and then whatever the title of it was. And then you can add it. And then that links it. So in this project, in the grants module, it will show that it's linked to this REB application. So that linking goes both ways. And that allows us to both release funding when your REB application is approved, or release installments for your project by checking the funding. So it kind of automates some of that. Like sometimes you're waiting to release money from a grant for an REB application to be approved. This way we know through the system, because they're linked. If you have something that isn't coming up when you search for it, you can just put the details in one of the text in the text box, and then someone in our office can do the linking for you. So just tell us like the title and who's funding it and who the PI is, and we should be able to dig it up for you. As well, there's another place to upload files. So we've put file upload spaces throughout the application. So if there's ever more information that you want to provide for something, you can always upload a document. And then we kind of get into the information specific to your project. So there's the description of the project, its objectives and potential significance. And then there's the research question. So these are text fields. They are limited. So it'll show in the bottom corner how many characters you're allowed and how many you've used. So if you get to a point where it's not letting you add anything else, you can look in that little corner and see if you've run out of space. If you have, maybe just make sure that it's not a question. Oh, excuse me. A question that's being asked again later on, that you can kind of split it out. But if not, and you have more to say, there's always going to be these little upload new file spaces. So you can just take it into a Word document or whatever file you have it in and attach it. And then if it is something that pertains specifically to objectives or to the research question, you can just say see attached and name the document as well. And then we've split out a number of different methodologies that are common. So you can tick one or you can tick multiple of them. So I think someone said they were doing interviews. So if you click on interviews, then the questions that are specific to interviews will pop open. So then we're asking the specifics about transcription, where the activity will take place, how the method is used, how long it's expected to take, what's the role of each of the members of the research team. The questions, some of the questions are the same for all of them. Some of them are very specific depending on what the methodology is. So it's kind of tailored to each one. So you might have one, maybe you have a couple of them, maybe you're also doing some sort of experiment in the lab, then you can add that information as well. And then we go on to the section for compensation. Oh, and you're going to hear, just so you know, this is where you're going to upload all the materials related to the method. So if you have interview guides, copies of surveys, any other things that you're using, that's where you'll upload those. And then we move on to the section on compensation. So we ask whether participants will be compensated. If you say yes, again, more questions open up. So now we want to know the amount and form. And then again, there's a place to upload information. So if you have a receipt of compensation document that you're using to kind of track who got what, that might be something you would upload there. Will deception of any kind be necessary? Yes or no? We'll say no. And then there's some information about confidentiality. So if people are anonymous, and then the different ways that we might be limiting confidentiality, and then describing safeguards used to protect their confidentiality. So again, quite a few text box. I'm going to go back, make sure I'm not missing a whole bunch of stuff. And then we move on to the section on risks and benefits. So you'll want to tick any of the areas that you anticipate there could be risks associated with them. So whether that's legal or social or physical. And again, if you want more detail on, what some of these might mean or examples, you're going to want to refer back to that guidance note document that you will have open right beside you as you're working through this. Sometimes the questions don't apply, so it says if above minimal risk. So if it's not above minimal risk, you don't have to worry about answering that question. Same here, this is only for above minimal risk questions, so you don't have to answer it. I always like when people put NA, so we know that they've deemed it to be not applicable and not that they just haven't skipped a question by accident. And now we've gotten to the bottom of form part 1. So to get to form part 2, you can either click on the tab at the top of the page. You can click on the little ellipses, which can also be used if you want to jump back to another section. So if you got down to risk and benefit and realized that you forgot something in compensation, you can click there to go back up or back to the bottom. And you can also use the ellipses to go to form part 2, like different tabs, or you can just click on the little next button. And then this takes you to form part 2. And here we have questions about the use of internet. So will you have any internet-based interaction with participants? This question is almost always going to be yes. It is very, very rare that you have a research study where you're not going to be emailing participants or engaging with them online or doing something that involves the internet. Sometimes you're going to a classroom administering a survey, they're doing it on paper and they're handing it back to you. And that's fine. In that case, you would get to say no, but there's not a whole lot of those happening anymore. We ask specifically about email communication and what kind of information will be shared. If you're using third-party research tools, we want to know information about that. And again, these are all text fields that have limited space, and some are longer than others. We've kind of tried to guess which option is required for that particular question. There's a short section on whether it's a clinical trial. I'm guessing you're probably not doing clinical trials, but if you are, there's a little more administrative work that's going to be required, and you can certainly talk to Gogo about that. And then as far as Indigenous research, we have a few questions to try and tease out whether the additional questions and considerations around Indigenous research need to be addressed. So if it's yes to any of these, then you do have to look at the remaining questions that are going to pop up. So you'll see if we tick yes, a whole bunch of other questions are going to pop open. Related to you know, community engagement and management of data and things like that. If you hit yes by accident, you can always hit no to go back, but maybe you're like, no, no, no. Oh, wait, this one's a yes. And then you still have to answer all the remaining questions. So it's important that you read those carefully so that you're answering all the questions as needed. And then we ask if there's going to be a research agreement between the researcher and the community. In most cases, yes, there should be, but sometimes it's not appropriate. And then you're able to justify that. And then there's also a section on collaborative or participatory action research. So, and those involve kind of a lot of the similar questions, asking you to describe it and community engagement, all of that information. And then we ask if the research office was involved in the agreement. So if you do have a research agreement with a community, again, there's a place here that you can link to the agreement that our office has negotiated so that they're linked in the system. The next section is recruitment. So we want you to describe the participants and the inclusion and exclusion criteria. And then we want to know the number and justification for the number of participants. How you'll obtain contact information. A description of the recruitment process, so how you plan to get in contact with these people who you are hoping to recruit. I guess to back up a little bit, I realize that this is a ton of questions and a lot of people find the process to be pretty overwhelming, but it can be really good even before you're ready to submit the application to go through it and look at all the considerations that need to be looked at while you're developing your study. Because sometimes we get studies where people have these ideas of things that they want to do, but they haven't really thought out the details of how they're going to recruit participants and how they're going to get in touch with these people. And sometimes it's just not something that they can make happen. And so they're kind of at this late stage and they haven't really thought about, you know, how they're even going to make this happen. So it's a really good exercise to go through because it breaks your, you know, this huge project that you're going to undertake. It breaks it out into these little, very specific pieces that in my head makes it a lot easier to tackle. We ask about vulnerable populations, if there's any pre-existing relationships, and keep in mind some of these questions, like it's not like if you answer yes to any of these questions, we're not going to approve your application. It just means that you know, if there is pre-existing relationships or something, there has to be other considerations that are in place to make sure that, you know, there isn't a power differential that could be seen as coercive or something like that. And again, there's a place to upload your recruitment materials. So if you're doing recruitment verbally and you have a script that you're going to read to people, we want to know what that script is so that we can look at what you're saying to them, whether you're using a poster or an email. We're going to want to see all of that attached here. And in some cases, a waiver of consent can be requested. It's not a very common thing, but then there's particular things that you need to be able to justify in order to obtain a waiver of consent. The policy that we follow federally is very, very specific on you may only do this if the following things are in case. So it kind of has to be that it's the only way and there's no other way. So it can't be just like it's more convenient. You have to meet very specific criteria in order to obtain a waiver of consent. And then there's a section on the consent process. So we do ask for you to describe how consent will be obtained. So whether you're going to be handing a standard consent form to someone and having them read it, whether you're going over it with them and enabling them to ask you any questions, or whether you're going to be obtaining oral consent. And if so, how are you going to document that it's been obtained? Or is it something that will be recorded? Or is it something that's going to be obtained online through an online survey? All those kinds of things. And then again, who will obtain consent? And then how long people have to decide whether or not they want to participate. How consent will be maintained throughout the project. So if you're having multiple points of contact with the participants, how are you going to make sure that they still want to be involved at each stage? Again, talking about vulnerable participants and minors. So if you have oh, excuse me, sorry. If you have participants who are under the age of 18, they're not old enough to provide consent on their own. So you have to have a process in place to get parental or guardian consent. And then you still have to get assent from the participant. The only exception, well, not the only exception, but the exception that's very common is if it's a university student. So a lot of our first year students are only 17. If they're enrolled in university, we consider them to be cognitively advanced, that they can determine whether or not they want to participate in this study or not. So it is okay if a university student under 18 years of age, they can consent for themselves. That's okay. Talk about if people are from a different linguistic group, whether you're going to be able to provide interpreters or something like that. The right to withdraw, if people can withdraw midway through, how do they do that? And then discussing a little bit about the potential for future use of their data. So something else to consider. We asked, so on our website, on that forms page that we were on earlier, we do have templates that you can use. So we have a couple of different consent form templates. Article 3.2 of the Tri-Council policy statement explicitly provides a list of things that need to be included in the consent process. So all the things that you need to be telling people. If you use our consent form template, you will hit all of those criteria. If you don't want to, you can make your own template. We have no problem with that. But then you do have to look at Article 3.2 and make sure that you're still answering all those questions. You can't just look at our template and start deleting stuff off of it because it's too long. There's things in there that need to be addressed for a lot of the research studies that might be going on. And then we want you to upload those consent materials. So whether it's a script that you're going to be reading to people for oral consent, and then, you know, a document showing how you've obtained their consent, or whether it's a consent form or the page of the front of your survey where you're getting consent, that can all be uploaded here. Let's say no. And then finally, we have the section on data security. So these are all the questions that we ask about how you're storing data, how you're keeping it secure, what you're doing with it at the end during the study. Is it moving around? Is it staying in the same place? Is it on the internet? Things like that. And depending on what the data is, sometimes those things have really big impacts, and sometimes it's not as critical. That. And some of these are pretty short questions, like we want to know how long you're planning on storing it. We do require that it's stored for more than 5 years. It could mean that you're uploading it to a, you're sharing it publicly and it's going to be in a repository. You can say that here. And then we just want to know that, you know, it's been anonymized, or that participants are aware that that's what's going to happen to their data when it's done. And then again, there's a place to upload any kind of attachments that you have. So this is kind of the end. So it's kind of the catch-all. So if somewhere along the way, you had a place or something that you wanted to upload, but there wasn't really a specific designated place for it, you can always put it here at the end of form part 2. That's kind of the catch-all. And then that's kind of the meat and potatoes of the application. From here, you'll go to the declaration tab. Here is where you can also add other personnel. So if there's people that work at the U of R, so if there's other collaborators, co-investigators, those can all be listed here and they get attached in the same way. So you can do a search for them. So maybe we wanted to add Michelle to the study. I'm not going to because I don't want her to get any notifications or anything, but you can add personnel. There's also an opportunity, if you can't find people, you can also enter it in the text box and we'll find them and upload them for you. There's also the option to add people without, so this person here has view access, so they can see the application. So as soon as the application has their name on it and it's saved, it will show up in their list of applications. They do not have any edit privileges, so they can't change anything, they can't move it to different statuses or submit it, but they will be able to see it and read it, which if it's someone that's working on the project is really important because they need to know what their obligations are. And, you know, if you have 3 different people who might be looking after the consent process, they should be able to read that section on consent and see all the documents related to it so they know what they're obligated to do. But there is also the option to add people without view access, which is kind of an exceptional circumstance, but there might be cases where there's someone who's just being hired to transcribe interviews or do a very, very discrete task, and not really being involved in the overall project. So in cases like that, you might want to have them listed without view access. And then we also have a mechanism to add external personnel, and they will never have view access. So they aren't able to see the application, but we do still want them attached, because if we ever have to pull someone and see everything that they're associated with, this allows us to do that. And then before you're able to submit the application, you need to fill out the conflict of interest disclosure. So we're wondering if you have any personal or financial interest in the outcome of the project. So that does not include like you're being paid as a research assistant to do it. It's that I have a business, and if this study proves this one thing, it means that my business could become more profitable or something like that. Excuse me. I guess I will have to answer these, or it's not going to let me submit it. And if you do have a conflict of interest, you just have to explain what it is. I mean, it doesn't mean that you're not going to get it approved, but there does need to be a disclosure. And then as the principal investigator, you submit the declaration. If you're a student, so say you're listed as the primary contact, you're filling out the application, but it's your someone else's project and they're the PI, then they're the one that's gonna do the declaration. So you would not have filled out this conflict of interest, leave that blank and leave the declaration blank, and then you would just click save. Actually, you would save and close, but I don't want to do that right now. And then tell them, okay, I'm done entering your application. Can you go through it? And then they'll open it, and then they'll have to fill out the conflict of interest and the declaration. But for now, we're doing this as a student PI. So as a student, you are able to fill out the declaration, and you're reading each one of these really carefully before you tick the box. And then that's it. So now the application is done. You are ready to submit it. So you're going to click on save and close. And then it starts in draft always when you close it. So anything that's, you can leave it in draft, but you'll have to move it to in preparation before you can submit it. So now we're going to save it as in preparation and hit done. This will usually happen over like the course of a very long period because you've actually entered responses to these things. But now to go into it again, it'll take you back to your dashboard. And you can see here, so this application is one we were just doing, the test application for presentation. It's currently in status in preparation. You can see that on the right-hand side here. So we're going to go into it again. So to go and look at it again, you click on View Edit. And then it just opens it again. So nothing, it's same, open. And then you'll click on Save and Close. And here we have the option for supervisor's review. So in order to submit it to your supervisor, you click on supervisor's review and done. And now it's going to show you, okay, there's missing fields. So there's been a mandatory field that's missing. So it shows us here with this little exclamation mark that it's in form part 2. And then it'll take us down to it. So, oh, okay, I missed this little tick box here. Will the project involve community-based participatory research? No. And it didn't take us to any others, so that was the only one that we missed. So again, save and close. Supervisor's review. And done. And now your supervisor will have gotten an email saying that you've submitted the application to them and it's ready for them to review. I would recommend that you follow up with your supervisor, give them a day or two or something, follow up with them. And then if they have any questions or things that need to be revised, they can send it back to you. They can't edit it. So your supervisor, unless someone is listed as PI or primary contact, they don't have edit privileges. So if you're the PI and your supervisor is your supervisor, listed as supervisor, they can't change your application. They have to send it back to you to make the changes because you're the one that's conducting the research. So we want to make sure that someone else can't go in there and change something and then you don't realize that what you thought you're doing when you wrote it has been changed and now you're actually doing something else. So now you wait. You can always go back into Converis and check on the status here and see if it's changed. But when your supervisor sends it to compliance review, you'll get a note saying that it's been submitted for compliance review. And if they send it back to you for additional comments or clarification, you'll get an email saying that that's what's happened. So you can kind of sit on it. If your supervisor hasn't returned it to you, while it goes through the review process, you wait and wait. And you can keep checking on the status here. And then eventually it will change to saying NER response required. And you'll get an email saying, actually, let's see, I think I can pull it up. Yes, here we go. Can you see the email? So you will get an email that looks like this, that just says that the REB has reviewed the application, that changes are required, and then kind of how to review. It kind of gives you a very, very brief explanation of how to get to the comments, and then information on how to log in and where to find the manuals. So you'll get the email, go back into Converis. And so what I did is before the presentation, I made another application so that it was going to be in the right status for us. So now we're going to look at this one and pretend it's actually the other one that we submitted. So you can go through and see, okay, here's my application, click on view edit. And now you'll notice, oh, why is he in there? Okay. So you can only have one person in an application at one time. You can view it, but you can't make changes to it. So for some reason, our admin person has gone into this application. So it says here, and this might happen, you might go into it and your supervisor might be in it at the same time. And you can see here currently being edited by. So before you can make changes, they need to go out of it, but you can still look at everything. Okay, here, he's out now. Good, perfect. Now, you'll notice that now that this has been returned to you with the comments, you can no longer edit the application itself. So we've locked down all of these different fields so that you can't change them. What we want you to do is go to this More tab, and there's a place called Review. So you'll click on Review. And then here you can see that there's an NER. So these are the comments. So these are the comments from the reviewers and the chair that you need to address. So to download them, you'll just click on the thing, save it to wherever you want to save it. And then you'll have to navigate back to that. So here was the NER comments. And these are going to be blank, but I'll show you what the template looks like. So here's the comments. So they'll enter it under each section. So under if it's an overview question, they'll have the questions in here. If it's related to the questionnaire, there's the question. So they kind of have them in the section related to it. So if there was a question regarding what is the role of each member of the research team, then you'll enter your response right underneath that. So you would just type in blah, 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 blah. Oh, let's put it in the right spot. So you would put in your response here and then just save the document. Oh, we gotta get rid of this. And then once you've saved your responses to all of the questions on that, you'll just put it under this NER response section. So it says, it gives you instructions, download the comments and upload with response. So then you're just going to click on upload here. And then you're going to upload wherever it was you saved the NER with those comments. And then, oh, I guess I'll do it so that you can see. So pretend that this was what you had responded to. So you've got all your answers to all of those questions in here. And then additionally, there could be places in the document where it says, you need to add this to the consent form, or maybe please provide the recruitment script or something that you've missed that they'd like to see. You can upload those here. So any revised consent forms, like if you've revised something that's somewhere else in the application, or if you've had to create something new, you can just upload them all here with revised documents. So kind of anything that accompanies this can get uploaded here under revised documents. Does that make sense? Are you guys all still with me? We're almost there. Awesome. Thanks. And then once you've done that and you've uploaded all the documents required and there, you'll click again on Save and Close. And then you're going to pick Supervisor's Review, and that'll send it to your supervisor, and done. And then you're good. So that sent it to your supervisor. They'll look at your response before it comes back to us. And then it goes right to the chair. And the chair will look at it and make sure if you've answered all the questions and everything looks good, then the next message that you will get will say that the application has been approved. And then you're good to go and you can start. You will get an email when it's approved. And you can also look on here, and the status for it once that happens will show as active, approved. Then two more things actually. A lot of people ask about how to create a PDF of the application. So if you have collaborators that you want to share it with, or sometimes your supervisor wants to see a PDF of it rather than having to log into the system to review it. Some people would rather look at it in a slightly different format. Rather than clicking on View Edit, click on the actual title, this link up here. And then this brings you to this page that shows all of the questions and all of the responses, and also has any of the documents. So if there's a document, there's one at the end, so any of these documents you can download directly from that document, even if it's not you. So if you send this to someone, they can still download these documents and look at them. So then you have this. So then to make that into a PDF, you just click on Create PDF up here in the top right corner. And there you've got a PDF that you can save wherever you want or send to whoever wants it. And then the other thing, so to go back to your dashboard, you can always click on the little breadcrumbs at the top or in the menu on the left-hand side. And so we were looking at all our applications. So I'll just click on REB at the side here. And then here you can see if something's active, what the status is, if you want to check the status of something. And if an application has been approved, and now you want to submit another application for something that's maybe really similar, or you just want to have that as a template to start from, you can click on Clone, and that will create a new application with the same information as the one that you had already approved, and then you can just go through and change it. So if it's easier because you know your recruitment's going to be the same and your consent process, all of that's going to be the same, you can clone a previous application to prevent having to fill in all the fields. You just have to be really careful that you've updated absolutely everything and there isn't anything in there that shouldn't be from the old application. So that's all I have for you guys. Do you have any questions for me? I know it's a lot, but we're here if you have questions, and there's all sorts of resources for you as well.
Sorry, I have two questions.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering how long does it take this kind of process to get approval? Just the estimation, just so for the simple survey for the standard one.
It really depends. Our compliance officer she tries to turn things around at her stage in a week. So if it doesn't have to get sent back to you for anything, it's a week with her, and then we give our reviewers 2 weeks to review the application. So that's 3 weeks. And then from there, it goes to the chair. So then it usually takes them about a week to get the comments back. So, and that's if nothing ever has to get sent back and everything kind of runs like right on time. So like and because I'm not the one that reviews these, I'm not sure what the timelines are looking at right now. But I would say like if everything was really, really good, about a month until you hear back. But quite often, like if she has to send it back to you, like every time it goes back, it takes a while for people to respond. So, you know, sometimes we send people an NER and it takes them 2 months to respond to it. Well, then our review times are now 2 months longer because, and you can, we don't care how long you take to respond to us, but it does impact these timelines quite a bit. But yeah, make sure you give it lots of time, especially if it's your first one, because if we get an application submitted and it's missing you know, a lot of information, or it's really hard to understand exactly what you're doing, then it takes her a really long time to put together all the comments that go back to you for you to redo the application. And you can always meet with her too, and she can go over it with you before you submit it. If you know, if you have questions or have sections that you want to talk about, she can do that too. And that sometimes helps speed things up.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Anyone else? Okay. Well, thank you all. And I guess it's Friday, so enjoy your weekend. And if you have any questions, let us know.